China is a large country in Eastern Asia with about the same land area, 3.6 million square miles, as the US, but with 1.4 billion people, 4 times as many people as the US. Latitude stretches from Canton in the tropics to northern Manchuria, not that far from the Arctic Circle. That meant different foods and budding civilizations at different times. The land slopes from west to east, with 5 principal rivers flowing usually to the Pacific Ocean. The Yangtze and the Yellow Rivers are the best known.
Evidence of proto-farming of millet goes back about 9,000 years in northern China. Wild rice probably ran from northeastern India and spread throughout the warmer, wetter parts of Southeast Asia. The earliest evidence of rice in southeastern China dated back 7,700 years. A Chinese village with agriculture, buildings, and pottery dated to 5000 BCE. Chinese farm production was labor-intensive, particularly rice techniques where output rose with back-breaking work. Intensive farming could increase production to 2 or 3 crops a year. The Chinese produced early metalworks. Copper manufacturing started somewhere between 5000 and 3000 BCE. Bronze artifacts appeared soon after. Iron was first processed about 2000 BCE, and China produced steel before the Common Era. The Chinese crossbow was invented about 400 BCE and gunpowder by 900 CE. Silk, brocade, blast furnaces, paper, woodblock printing, the wheelbarrow, magnetic compass, and the loom all came from China. The Grand Canal was built around the 7th century, connecting the Yellow and Yangtze rivers. Historic records date the first Chinese dynasty over 4,000 years ago. Then the Shang and Zhou dynasties, plus periods of warring states. Imperial China really began with Emperor Qin, who subdued and unified the other states by 221 BCE. Still, the area was only a fraction of modern China. Unusual when compared to the world were continuous empires until the 20th century, possibly due to a successful bureaucracy. The Han Dynasty lasted from 206 BCE to 220 CE. This was roughly the period of Roman expansion into empire and the Pax Romana. Thus, 2 great empires on the opposite sides of Eurasia. They more or less knew about each other, but likely unaware how rich and powerful the other was. Given the chaos during the Roman Empire, we give the edge to Han China. Confucianism received orthodox status during the Han period, emphasizing morality, justice, and kindness. Confucius was a minor functionary during the Shang period who developed a humanistic approach to life, emphasizing obedience. Unselfishness and virtue were expected traits. Confucius also established cooking and eating protocols, like eating fresh and local. Taoism came from the legendary Lao Tzu and the Tao Te Ching, emphasizing the way or path.
The Han Empire expanded westward into northwest China. The Silk Road expanded from China to eventually reach Rome. Eastern sections became part of China, but the peoples were culturally distinctive. Treaties and diplomatic relationships were formed mainly to expand trade and create military alliances. The Han Empire also expanded, both militarily and diplomatically, into Southeast Asia. The main Chinese export was silk, which was relatively light and valuable. A Roman trader made it to China about 100 CE and noted the different cultures, including palaces and temples made of ornately carved wood, wide roads, and different foods. Legend has it that the emperor created tea in 2737 BCE when a blossom fell into his cup of boiling water. Tea comes from the camellia, a semi-tropical bush native to China. Tea was considered medicinal, with tannic acid plus boiling killing bacteria and caffeine having enlightening effects. Typical of China, tea processing was labor-intensive. There were Confucian and other tea ceremonies, including Four Noble Truths of harmony, respect, clearness, and tranquility. Soybeans, a legume like peas and other various beans, was indigenous to East Asia and possibly domesticated as long as 9,000 years ago. Processing separated soy oil from soy flakes, which could be used for soy flour. Soy sauce was relatively modern, developed about 1200 CE, presumably by a Buddhist monk. Tofu, which is soy curds, something like soft cheese, was first created perhaps a couple of thousand years ago. Americans were introduced to Cantonese food because that's where most of the Chinese immigrants came from, like those building the Transcontinental Railroad. Tea was the most common beverage. Rice was key to Cantonese cuisine, with relatively bland sauces. Pork, poultry, and fish were eaten, as were black beans, peas, and soy. Stir-fry and steaming were the common cooking techniques, largely because of the lack of firewood. Sweet and sour pork was a Cantonese specialty. Slow-cooked dishes, including egg drop soup, noodles, and various side dishes were served, like dim sum, which can be steamed dumplings or baked meat-filled pastries. It's on to another misunderstood country, India, a country about a third the size of China, with about the same population, over 1.4 billion. It had a distinctive set of cultures and history, with periods of great wealth and power for the elites, with simultaneous extreme poverty, with the untouchables at the bottom. We'll summarize the complexity on food, history, and mystery.